So I am delighted to have with us here today Jenny and Dawn, communications and research impact and many other things besides, respectively, from Plymouth Marine Laboratory. PML is a small but very highly regarded research institute, one of NERC's, the Natural Environment Research Council's half a dozen research institutes. Curiously, it doesn't join in with the same ref cycle as you all do in the universities world, but NERC in their infinite wisdom have recreated something which is essentially the same thing but different. And so Dawn and Jenny are going to talk about the work that they have done to develop a research strategy, an impact strategy rather, and how they've found a way of working across comms and research impact, as is what we all try and strive to do here. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And after we've finished here, we're going to put that into practice in our workshop session to round off the day. So thank you very much, Jenny and Dawn.
Thank you for having us here today. We are a little bit of the interlopers, being not from a university, but it's been a fantastic morning. We found it really insightful, so we're really delighted to be here. And I mean, true to form of how we work in the sense of very closely together across comms and impact, we're going to do a bit of a double act today for our presentation. So yeah, we work at Plymouth Marine Laboratory, so come a fair way, a few hours today. Was up at 4:30, so excuse us if we do trip over our words a little bit. And so I am head of IRIS, Integrated Research Impact and Support Services, which is a terrible title, but I just love the acronym, so it kind of went with it. And Dawn is a Senior Communications Officer, so we work together very closely. We're very lucky to kind of have quite a smaller organisation to work with, so it makes that a little bit easier. So, oh, sorry, Dawn, I'm instantly pressing the wrong buttons. So just to a little bit of context about PML, like Michael said, we are small in relatively to universities with about 160 employees, but we have very much a very global presence. So our scientists are working all over the world. We have projects. We're very project-based. So we're not a teaching institute, but we do have PhD students, and we work very project-based, very research project-based. And yeah, we're very award-winning. I mean, we can actually say that with pride. Two of our scientists just got an MBE last week, so that's kind of quite common at PML. We have a lot of that activity that goes on. And we're very multidisciplinary, which really helps us with the impact as well. And we have lots of state-of-the-art facilities. So PML has 6 science areas, and this really range across the disciplines, obviously all related to marine science, coastal science, but also we do some inland waters and lake stuff. So we have a social science, economics department, remote sensing. So we do a lot of work. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at satellite image and saying remote sensing. Modelling. So we have a massive modelling contingency at PML. It contributes to a lot of kind of climate change models, carbon budget models, that kind of thing. Also remote sensing, so a lot of satellite imagery of the ocean. PMO actually been working with NASA since the 70s, so technology that we have for ocean colour nowadays wouldn't have been possible if PML hadn't actually been involved and done the validation with ships, all that over the last few decades. So you can see what I mean about acting very globally, even though we seem like a small organisation. We also have a kind of MEB, Marine Ecology and Biodiversity Unit, which is more about the plants and animals, and a group that's more about the chemistry and the physics of the ocean. We have lots of data points and time series for that. And one that's fairly new to us is our digital innovation group, so very forward-looking about how do we have marine autonomy, how do we collect data in more effective, cost-efficient ways. So a really broad range of disciplines. And one of the real things, as I say, PML is very interdisciplinary across these 6 areas. Because of our size and scale, we really do work across groups. And one of the mechanisms that we use to help that is called our Science to Impact Challenge areas. So these are very impact-looking groups that we've got biodiversity, clean seas, climate change, and fisheries and aquaculture. So they were identified using a very kind of bottom-up process internally. What are the key challenges for the ocean over the next few decades, and how can we work towards solutions and contribute towards solutions for them? So these, as I say, help us to do interdisciplinary working and really solution-focused working. And just drawing on some of the discussions earlier about having champions that are academics. So each one of these areas has a lead, a coordinator that is from the academic staff. But I chair the whole group. So it is kind of planting those academics into the impact story and getting them to do some of the messaging for us. But actually we get to work very closely with them. So it's a good example of that. So I don't want to blow our own trumpet a little bit, but I do want to show while we're here today. We've been working on impact for quite a while. So pre-2017, it's quite fair to say a lot of our impact was due to just chance, really. The fact that we do work very interdisciplinary, and the fact that we often go to things like the COPs and we're very present, at those kind of large-scale events. But it was very much chance. We weren't planning how to have impact. It was just that we were in the right place at the right time often. So since 2017, there's been this real growing interest and dedicated time to understanding impact and such like. And that was largely driven by the NERC REF process that Michael was saying about. So yes, exactly. It follows the REF process almost to the letter, but NERC run it themselves, and we are on a slightly different cycle. So after we finished writing the case studies for the impact for the NERC evaluation, we really wanted to take everything we'd learnt and put it into kind of doing things more strategically, more proactively. So we created the first PML impact plan, which actually sits alongside our science strategy. So it's given the same weight as our science plan, and they really kind of cross over quite a lot. Going forward, that's actually even more embedded. So our next strategy cycle will be a science, technology and impact strategy. Impact will be front and centre of what we do. And these four challenge areas that I've mentioned before, they're actually going to be the kind of four main pillars of our science strategy. So, I mean, I see this as one of our big achievements, that we've really taken this kind of impact culture a hell of a long way at PML, from it just being kind of in the background to now it being part of our strapline, part of everything we do. So just to give a flavour of kind of where our impact sits, these were our 4 case studies. Yes, we only have to submit 4. I'm very sorry. I know you guys have to submit a hell of a lot more than this, but obviously it's all based on scale. So what we're able to do because of this, only doing 4, Dawn and I basically write them. So we work very closely with the scientists, but the emphasis isn't on the scientists to do all of the research and pull it all together. We do most of the work for them, so it's quite a different relationship. But we had one on microplastics. I don't know if many people are aware, but the ban that came in on wash-off soaps and stuff that had little beads in them that were basically plastic, that got banned a few years ago. Well, PML were one of the main driving forces because we were able to show that things like zooplankton are eating those little beads and it's getting into the food chain. And I don't know, you might have seen this on Blue Planet. The filming that was actually used in Blue Planet came from PML's lab on that very matter. Also, satellite data, we use that to show where ocean fronts are, and that can be related to where whales and dolphins are likely to be, where pelagic diversity is likely to be, and that has been used to inform the designation of marine protected areas. We actually, this sounds really grand, but honestly, I've got a case study that I can back it up with. We got ocean into the Paris Climate Change Agreement. So our scientists were the ones that were there on the front line, at the negotiations, in people's ears, telling them to make sure ocean was mentioned. And also around, we do a lot of social science, ecosystem services stuff, and that's been used in a lot of designations, conservation areas. So that kind of hopefully shows a bit of the breadth of the case studies. And what happened, what we're really proud of, is we scored the best of all of the NERC research centres, and we were the only category in all of it to only fit in the 4- and 3-star category. And why this was important is it really galvanised the internal support and credibility for our impact work. So it was really important in our journey of kind of getting that internal recognition of the value of impact. So as I say, we then went on to kind of put this knowledge and learning into our impact plan. Obviously, we saw from trying to do those case studies retrospectively, so many flaws in trying to find all of that evidence after the fact, long after, often when people had left their jobs and things had been lost to the, in the passage of time. So that was one of the big kind of drivers, is how do we do this more proactively going forward? We also wanted to ensure that impact opportunities weren't lost. So yes, we'd had this great impact, it was amazing, but often by chance. How could we actually be more proactive to tailor those things, to make those things happen, to be in the right places at the right time, and not just leave it to serendipity? And we wanted to increase kind of understanding of impact across the organisation. Obviously, it can't just happen with 2 people. It has to be a buy-in from everybody. So it was very much about kind of bringing the organisation with us. So this is, I won't go too much into this, but it gives us the kind of structure of what our impact plan looks like. We really kind of tried to have quite a holistic approach to how we did this, making it part of PML's vision and structure, thinking about how we rewarded staff, how impact was recognised in our internal HR processes and such like, making sure the training and tools was there for capacity building, supporting proposals and projects and building the narratives around impact. So and we've got loads of information online. If people are interested in how our impact plan's constructed, then we can definitely provide some more information. And I'm sorry, I'm going to gloat again. It sounds terrible, this, but this is in an evaluation, independent evaluation of 60 impact strategies from across the world. We were very pleased to be chosen as one of best practice, which is, I think, partly how Michael found out about us and why we're here today. So obviously had to mention it. But that was led by Mark Reed, and we went on to work with him and another author, Saskia, to deliver a kind of seminar, an online seminar for people from all over the world about impact plans. So again, all this has really helped, not just externally the profile, but internally to kind of take everyone with us. They could see that it was having success and traction.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, so now we're going to talk about 5 tips for actually how we achieve this. And this was Michael's suggestion. So the 5 tips we thought of were to establish organisational buy-in and really work on building those internal relationships. Obviously, for impact, you need to plan, and you need to plan again, and then you need to adapt your plans and think again. Always keep monitoring what you're doing, monitoring and evaluating them. And then also to nurture external collaborations. So without the external people using our research, then there's going to be no impact. And these are just the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. So first, establish organisational buy-in. So we really need to build impact into the fabric of the organisation. We've always worked really closely with the senior management, who thankfully have been really actually very supportive and value impact. We're really lucky with the size of the organisation. We see the CEO, we see the Director of Science just walking around the corridors. It's a really small organisation. We know nearly all of the scientists. But we've also provided a really clear focus and structure to the impact work through our impact plan. And as Jen's also mentioned, we've ensured that impact's recognised in internal rewards. So it's part of promotion criteria, bonuses, awards, and even for recruitment, it's a requirement for interviews as well. So as Jen's mentioned, we've built trust in our expertise and commitment. But it's not just for our work and impact. We also work on other things. I work in the communications department. Jen has done lots of project management. And also, we contribute to high-level meetings in the organisation and strategy development. Jen sits on the science team, and we've been contributing to all sorts of things within the organisation. So this has really helped to underpin the development of impact culture within PML. But it's not just a top-down thing. We need to make it really easy and accessible to all of the staff. So to do this, we provided some in-house training. We've got 3 half-day courses that we run quite on a regular basis. So stakeholder mapping, impact planning, and monitoring and evaluation. We've also been asked to run these courses externally. So we've done from people like the UN Ocean Decade Committee. We've created a huge number of internal resources. You can see here, there's this is our intranet page that Jen created, but beneath that, there's so many layers and so many resources. So it includes all sorts of templates and guides and links to external resources too. But I think as a result of this, staff are feeling much more confident incorporating impact into their work. And we really don't want to add to their workload, because that's always the problem is when you approach research staff, isn't it? They think, oh no, what else do you want me to do? But actually, we really try and help facilitate it. Try not to add to workload, but just change the way they approach their work. So through this, we also need to build internal relationships. Jen and I can't create impact on our own. To increase the impact of PML science, we need the science. You know, the PML research is absolutely integral to this. But we ensure that our teams are visible and accessible within the organisation. We coordinate interdisciplinary discussions with these stick areas that Jen was talking about earlier. These are generally monthly topic-based meetings, and we always ensure there's cake and some sort of incentive to be there. We've embedded these impact champions into the science areas as they have specialist knowledge of key challenge areas, but could also pass on their impact knowledge to other researchers, as has been mentioned several times in this meeting today. We're always there. We're very happy to provide any much expertise and support that we can. But I think as you comms people know, the really important thing is to talk to researchers. We want to say, how can this be used? You know, who wants to know about this? Who could benefit from this research? To ask the so what question is really essential. And we think we've fostered like a collaborative environment where impact is really sort of everybody's responsibility, not just ours. So the core teams, we try and make sure they work really well together. Iris, this is Jen's department. They mostly do research support, project management, evidence recording, and stakeholder engagement in the event planning. And the Marcoms department, which I work in, as you probably all know, we do things like media relations, narrative development, graphic design, social media. But one thing we don't really do so much is we don't have students to attract to the organisation. So our remit is mostly focused on actually promoting the research that we do. So sitting on the intercept between this is the impact team, that's Jen and I. So we do impact strategy development. Jen leads the stick coordinators. We write case studies, we provide support to proposals. One really important thing that we try to do is to get dedicated impact time on all the proposals that we can contribute to. And we also do provide training, as we said. So ways to ensure this works is actually to be clear on what everyone does. Be clear of the roles of groups and individuals. We meet, the two groups meet quarterly to ensure crossover. Sorry, I can't speak, I've been up since I was 4. And one really important thing is that we've got staff that have a dual project management and impact coordination role. So these are people who will be recording things to report to their funders, but actually it's really important information we need for impact. So if they're doing that, we can reduce duplication of effort and they can record it for both the project management and the impact roles. And it's a small organisation, like we've said. Jen and I sit in offices next to each other, and there's loads of crossover. We're always in and out of each other's offices. We work with various members of each group, and there's an awful lot of crossover between us. And also, in Jen's office, there's also the international office, which is very small. It's only 2 people, but it really helps us to enhance global impact. So, plan, and plan again. So, with all impact approaches, you should start with the impact you want to have, not the science you want to do. So by strategically thinking about the impact from the beginning, we can really increase the likelihood of realising it. And to do this, we use all sorts of tools, and we provide these templates to the staff, things like a theory of change. And here you can see the theory of change from our PML impact plan. This one's like a really high-level aspirational plan, and they can be constructed at all sorts of different levels, so we have much more detailed ones for projects. And importantly, we always try to co-develop our proposals with research users so we actually know what the research users want. So we don't produce something that's no use to them. So we ask them what they want, and then we work out how we can provide that. So here, impact planning can increase the likelihood of realising impact. Without monitoring it, we aren't able to prove we've had impact. So by planning our impact approach, we can really plan how we're going to monitor it and actively seek evidence of impact and the pathway to it. So this is talking about meal plans mostly. We use these to plan how we're going to collect evidence of impact and the pathway to impact. So we use this meal tool. It's monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. And it helps to identify the indicators of change and how we're going to gather the evidence of this. It also enables us to proactively plan for this and actively seek evidence by doing maybe surveys or impact interviews with people who use our research. It also helps us plan to demonstrate the significance of the work and the breadth and the impact of the impact so we can help contribute to the REF. So, planning for communicating. The point is, always have a really clear purpose and think about the audience really carefully from the outset. I was really interested by this idea of AI audiences. I love AI. Claude's my best friend. But on all our communications materials, we want to include a real clear call to action. What do we want people to do when they read our research? I'm really trying to target this effort on impact-ready case studies. So here's an example of some communication materials that were aimed at CCS site managers. CCS is carbon capture and storage. So many of the things we've done are like these 4-page summaries of research areas with really individually tailored messages. And we also accompany with these things like business cards, postcards for distributions at events. And when we send them to people, we always put like a message with it saying, this is what we're sending to you and why we think you might be interested in it. So we really look to research these people beforehand and see why they might be able to use our research. So we also try our very best to engage with people who could use our research. It requires tailored approaches and very much creative thinking, we find. And we tailor the approaches to the purpose and the context of the event that we're planning. So the example here, we started off using the very classic problem trees and objective trees, although with a bit of a mangrove feel, so it's a sort of marine sort of tint to it. But then for different events, we found they didn't quite work. So we tried to change them, we adapted them. So once we tried to replace them with a more positive spin, because like the problem tree was all a bit negative and we didn't really quite like that. So we changed it to a problem to a challenge. And we changed it to barriers to achieving the challenge and consequences of that. Then we got a bit more excited. We added a mud layer. So we've got the mud layer where the actions and the root factors causing this challenge and the benefits from that. And even again, we've got many iterations. I promise I'll only show you 3. We added actors in the middle. So we're discussing actors needed to achieve impact and a little cloud on the top for the ultimate benefit. So we'd exhausted our trees and we thought we really need something new. We've got an impact event coming up in next week after next, isn't it? So we looked at all sorts of different theories. What was it? Appreciative inquiry theory, theory of change, and SWOT analysis. So, and we combine these together. So, I know it looks a bit silly, but people have told us that can be a bit scary, so we're trying to be approachable. So we start off with the right-hand side of our poster. This is our vision, the utopian tropical island. What would the situation look like in the ideal world? So we get people to stick post-it notes on there, whatever challenge they're trying to address. What would it really look like if you had unlimited resources? Then we fold over to the other side. We get a pirate ship. So this is the situation now. So is this the current situation? And we look at the strengths of what's going on now, but also what are the gaps? And then we get people to identify these. And once we've spent a bit of time on this, sticking post-it notes, as we always do, we open up the poster. And then we show our ship's wheel. So we talk about how do we sail our ship from the current situation through all the choppy waters to our utopian desert island. We're not sure if it will work yet. It's next week. We have tested it. But we look at things like the barriers to achieving this. But what opportunities are there? What activities do we need to do to achieve this? Who do we need to engage? And what outputs do we need? So very much similar things that you find in the theory of change. And I'm handing back into Jenny.
Thank you. Claude really is her best friend as well. It's quite scary. If anybody uses impact interviews, this is when Dawn actually convinced me of how important ChatGPT and the others are, because we had to interview someone from ESA, a European Space Agency, at the last minute, someone very senior about our impact. And we had to come up with a list of questions, which probably would have taken us a good hour to look back on all our impact, what we're going to ask him. She put his LinkedIn address and she put information about PML into ChatGPT. And it generated 20 questions that were practically perfect for us to use for that interview. So just a hint that actually it's crazy the amount of applications we can use AI for that are really helpful. And obviously we checked through them all and we changed them slightly, but it probably took us 10 minutes instead of an hour. So just another little useful application. So, I mean, as we've kind of made the point a couple of times around monitoring and doing it in real time and actively collecting evidence, this is one of the key things that we do, so that when we come to write our next case studies, everything should be there for us, hopefully, on a plate, ready to go. So we use this kind of monitoring log approach to record everything as we go along. And what we've done, like Dawn said, we work with project management and impact coordination as a kind of try and bring them together as much as possible, because a lot of the information is useful to reporting on project and on the impact itself. So this is just an example of one of our monitoring logs where we actively collect evidence. Because obviously, as you all know, it's not just about demonstrating the impact at the end. We have to show the material contribution. We have to show the thread from the science to the impact. So we have to collect all that information on the steps that are in between, on that pathway. And, you know, particularly with government departments, everybody moves around so often, you can really lose track and opportunities to get testimonials and evidence. So we really try and plan and do this in real time. We also designed this monitoring log to match with research fish fields and with EU reporting. So when we come to have to populate those kind of portals, we can just come to these monitoring logs and copy and paste information in. So we try to make them as useful as possible. And you'll see all these tabs at the bottom. So there's one that's research activity. That's kind of quite a project management-y one, tracking progress. And then one on engagement. So all those interactions with research users, policymakers and such, to kind of start drawing that thread, that pathway. We have a tab that's output, so everything that comes out of the project or the activity, you know, science papers, but also research briefs, tools, data, anything at all that we can then track as part of the pathway. And the one that's visual there is around outcomes. So we start tracking who's using this. So this obviously the stage before we've quite got to the impact, but we know, you know, DEFRA are suddenly using our decision support tool to inform something. That's where we start recording it. And impact tab, once we kind of understand what the actual change is that's happened and record it. We also have an action sheet, so it kind of pulls together actions throughout of all of the different tabs so that we can keep track of things we want to follow up on. You can tell I have a very strong project management background. And also feedback. So, you know, it is way too often that a scientist gets this amazing email in their inbox of, oh, yes, we've used your product and it was great and we've used your research here and there. And that sits in their inbox and gets forgotten and lost forevermore. So what we do is make sure all of that is captured, recorded, stored so we can access it easily. So on to our fifth and final of our 5 points, this nurturing external relationships element, which, you know, we see is incredibly important. You know, we cannot have impact on our own. We need other organisations to use the research to generate impact. So engaging with them is incredibly important. And if we can do it from an early stage and we can co-design it with them, we make sure that it's transferable and accessible and appropriate to their use, and hence increase the likelihood that they ends up having an application and ends up having impact. But that process, working with them, also kind of builds the trust and credibility in our science, in our processes and what we do. So one of the things that Dawn and I organise is opportunities for that kind of co-development and collaboration with research users. So we'll organise co-development workshops. This picture in the top right-hand corner was one where we looked at social prescribing, because obviously that's quite big nowadays, is sending people to the coast or to be in the environment to help them feel better rather than using medication. And we were working with a range of stakeholders to look at how do we make that more effective and accessible. So we had people there from GP surgeries and the people that do the social prescribing. We also had people there like the National Marine Park that provide opportunities for volunteers. And we were looking at how do we make this work? How do we bridge these two groups? Also impact events we organise, as Dawn was talking about the pirate ships we've designed for next week. So we have over 120 stakeholders, including academics and stakeholders coming along to PML well on the 18th of July. And they range from Marine Management Organisation, Natural England, Environment Agency, so lots of statutory bodies that you know, are research users essentially, but also councillors. We've got the leader of Plymouth City Council coming along. So we really try and engage, bring them along, talk to them, show them our science. You know, I think a lot of this is coming up through the other excellent talks we've seen today, and this is the kind of mechanisms we use to do that. We also organise visits to PML, so get people like DEFRA to come down, talk to us, demonstrate our science, show them around the laboratory. We organise for secondments to their organisation, go and embed in their places of work. Some of my staff today are at the Royal Society Science Exhibition. We've had a stand there all week, and that's been not just politicians going along, but loads of school groups. So we really do a lot of kind of work to make things happen, make those connections. You know, they don't always just happen by chance. We have to get out and kind of make opportunities happen. And also, you know, the easiest one, encouraging our academics to go to non-academic conferences. Go to the ones where the industry are and the stakeholders are and present your work and make it relevant to them. We're also trying to be as responsive as possible to requests. So we were talking in the other room, the excellent speech about select committees and inquiries. Well, a member of my group actively monitors all of the policy inquiries that come out are relevant to the marine realm, and then feeds them out through our Science to Impact Challenge leads, and we coordinate responses very tailored to those. So we have a very clear practical mechanism to actually monitor policy opportunities and make sure we respond to them. So I just want to talk about how we take a very tailored approach to impact generation as well. So this, like I say, is very much about these relationships. And we really always ask the question, who needs to know this? You know, this is excellent. We're really excited by the science. Who else needs to know this and what can they do with it? How can they apply it? How can we get them interested in this? So just to give a quick example, sorry, I know we're working on something called ALAN, which is the best acronym. We love this one, Artificial Light at Night. We often get some stinker acronyms to try and work with, but we like ALAN. So we know that ALAN, Artificial Light at Night, has horrible implications for human health, for bats, for insect decline, for all sorts of things, but also for the marine environment. So we've been able to show that it affects coral spawning, because those, particularly LEDs, since LEDs have come around and we have this really bright white light in all our street lighting that penetrates much deeper into the water column, it masks the moon cycles basically. So whereas you would have a lunar cycle normally that would trigger loads of things in the marine environment, we're completely masking that now. And so coral spawning, fish behaviour, camouflage in prey dynamics is all being affected by light pollution at the moment. So obviously, when we look at this, we're thinking, right, our impact aim is to reduce light pollution. That's what we want to do. How are we going to help our scientists get this research out there to do that? So these are just a few examples. We've been fortunate to be able to spend quite a lot of time on this, but we've really tried to identify who needs to know this. So we've been working with Dark Sky International, who are a global organisation. They are the ones that designate dark sky reserves, which obviously have implications for tourism and economy and such like. So we're working with them on making sure there's marine aspects on their website, because there's no information about marine impacts at the moment. But we're also looking at how can we have criteria for marine dark sky reserves, which also doesn't exist at the moment. We're working with the Intergovernmental Treaty for Sea Turtles. So unfortunately, this is kind of one of the big problems with lighting. Little sea turtle hatchings will head for the car park with the bright LED lights rather than the sea with the moon reflected off of it. So then you get a really increased mortality of sea turtle hatchings. So we've been working with this massive international treaty to look at overlayering our ALAN. We've got this big atlas of ALAN maps. We've overlaid that with nesting turtle hotspots, and we're sharing it with all their scientific committees to look at how we integrate that into management plans and reduce light pollution, particularly at those hotspot areas. We've been working with Blue Flag International because they accredit obviously Blue Flag status for boats, marinas, beaches and such like. Well, their policy currently says that all of those sites should use LEDs, should use energy efficient bulbs. So what we're doing with them is trying to work with them and say, that's fine, but can we also add some guidance in around shielding those lights, making sensors on those lights? Let's not have aesthetic lights there just for aesthetic purposes. Let's not have lights on solidly all the time, but only when they're needed. That's that kind of thing can make a real difference with this light pollution. So we're working with them on producing information for that as well. So, you know, if just a handful of these things come off, we'll have fantastic impact and we'll have a brilliant case study to write for the next ref. But, you know, this is great that we think very much like this. Who needs to know it and how do we make things happen? So, to summarise, you'll be glad to hear, just to give some reflections on kind of this whole piece that we've been working on. I mean, it has been our life for the last kind of 10 years, so it's fair enough that we've got a lot to say. The size and scale of PML obviously has helped us. Like, we've been able to embed approaches really quickly. We work very interdisciplinary already. And we're able to have a real whole organisation approach, and that is, you know, very much helped by the size and scale of us. We have been able to embed impact throughout everything. So like we talked about, it's in the HR recruitment processes, and it's in the comms strategy, and it's throughout so many aspects that people can't not do impact anymore. We've been very fortunate to have this commitment from senior management all along, and that has been essential. You know, having their buy-in and them understanding the value of it has really been important. And dedicated time. We have so, you know, when we started, it was just the two of us. Now I run a group of 9 people, and most of those work on impact. So, you know, the commitment has grown as we've been able to show the results of what we do. And obviously, this is quite pertinent, I know, because a lot of you are comms officers in the audience. Communication has been absolutely key to all of this. Like, we couldn't have done anything without being good communicators. Like, having strong, effective communication internally and externally is absolutely crucial. And that's where, you know, I'm so lucky to work with Dawn all the time, because even when we do internal information sharing, we always, you know, make sure it's really engaging and make sure it's really accessible. So when we made the impact plan, we had a vlog, that's what I would say. We made a whole video explaining what the impact plan was and how people could engage in it. We made summary versions. We had workshops, we had staff surveys. We've really kind of made sure we're communicating and giving people opportunities to feed in. And obviously externally, you know, the kind of briefs that Dawn's been showing, the way we produce things, communicating, having the hooks, having the calls to action in there, so important. And, you know, even when we have events, when we had our first impact event, we had an artist come along and do live illustration, which is the example in the bottom corner. So we're always trying to think about how we use communication and how we make things, you know, come alive through visuals and graphics and such like. And that's not about one team or one person, but all of us kind of have that in mind, that we need to keep our work engaging. So, you know, what's next for us is more of the same, really. I mean, building on the training that we do, both internally and the external stuff that we do. We keep trying to get dedicated funding for impact. We've been for what was it called? Those IMAs, is it, that you can, but we've not, NERC haven't actually done one in the last kind of 10 years, so that's been a downside. But developing relationships, obviously, as I've talked about, and keep refining our methodology. We're always trying to learn from what we do. So currently, at the moment, our ref is planned for 2026, which is slightly terrifying. And that will be where a lot of our attention goes in the next couple of years as we write the case studies for that. We're very much hoping it gets delayed, like the university process has been. Fingers crossed, considering they haven't given us no communication about what it's going to actually look like yet. And there's just some links to further information. There's lots of information about how we do impact on our website. And if you wanted to get in touch with Dawn and I, then you can just email impact@PML. But thank you ever so much for allowing us to come and talk to you.
Dawn and Jennifer, thank you very much. Loads of food for thought there. I wonder if I could just start the questions with a question for you, which is you mentioned very glibly about how academics, will receive fantastic feedback and then never forward it on. And you say, we make sure that happens. How?
We benefit from working very project-based because obviously we're not, everything we do is around research projects. So like my staff in IRIS, they're normally embedded as project managers, impact coordinators in the project. So they're aware of it. They're normally there. They're aware. They get the emails. They're copied in. So we're fortunate in the way we work, and we have this structure of having project managers, having impact coordinators embedded in projects. Otherwise, they know to share it with us. Otherwise, we hunt them down.
Indeed. So I suppose that's another, putting that into a university context, it's another good call for having faculty level officers, faculty level staff who are more familiar with the people who are working on things day to day, rather than being, a central team who only have time to check in with them once in a blue moon or whatever. Again, it all comes back to resources, I know, but also sort of the scale and how things are distributed across the university. I'll shut up. Questions? Any questions? Yes.
Hiya, thanks, that was great. I'm Juliette Harrison from Leeds Beckett University. So there was a little bit around how you'd given some evidence to Parliament and that sort of thing. So I was just interested in either your role or the role of people within your team in influencing policymakers, so how proactively you're doing that activity.
So, a member of my group will review all of the kind of calls that come out. So we use the University Policy Engagement Network and other kind of parliamentary office emails that come out that let you know what inquiries are upcoming, what post notes are upcoming. We kind of monitor all of them, and we have a running spreadsheet of what's out there and what we're doing to kind of follow it up. But it really helps having our Science to Impact Challenge leads, because it's kind of part of their responsibility to then coordinate responses. So if there's something relevant to climate change, it goes to that lead, and then they kind of help pull it all together. And there's lots of cases where we look at it and we say, nah, that's not quite relevant enough, we don't have the right time, the data, whatever it is. But as much as possible, we try and respond. And our response rate has increased massively in the last year because we're tracking it properly and making sure people are, encouraging people to respond. It's also, we provide templates of response templates and the blurb of what PML, that goes to the headers and toppers of everything. So we cut down the amount of work they have to do. Often we're submitting it. And crucially, we track then what happens after the inquiry, what was done with that evidence. And often then you get invited to the select committees and such, like if you've given the written evidence, then you're often invited to give the verbal evidence. So it's following up on those, getting the scientists there. We also do have a policy expert in the international office, Matt Frost. He's really engaged with what's happening. He sits on lots of government panels and such like. So he tends to know what's coming as well. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Make sure I'm not missing one.
Hello, Marianne Robertson from the University of Edinburgh. I was just wondering how you go about organising your events for end users of the research. How do you attract them to come and visit your organisation, and what format of event works best for them?
So this event in a couple of weeks, one of the key things we've done that's got a lot of interest there is I've paired up with Tamar Estuary Consultative Forum and the Plymouth Sound National Marine Park. So Plymouth, obviously we're very lucky to be on the coast where, right next to what we work on. And Plymouth is the first national marine park in the whole UK. So there's a lot of interest there at the moment on this. And we were obviously aware of this when we designed the event, that the timing was good to do something local. So we paired up with them, and we've worked with the leaders of each of those to do it as a co-event. We're co-delivering it. So that branding has really helped, because PML, like Dawn said, we can be a bit like, people are scared to come up to an academic organisation. That seems really scary, to come and talk to academics about water quality, because a lot of the stakeholders feel like, oh, I don't know enough. But there's more engagement because of those other partners, that they're more kind of accessible, they're more involved with. So I think pairing with other organisations has been incredibly helpful for getting the interest, and they had great stakeholder lists to share it with as well. So the TechF, the estuary partnerships that run the marine protected area, they have their quarterly meeting at PML in the morning, and then we're going to do this workshopy stuff all afternoon. So we paired it up on purpose. Obviously, we get them there. They're there in person anyway. We'll keep them there and do stuff with them. So we've tried to kind of piggyback a bit and use like their contacts as well, which is, yeah, that really helps.
Thank you.
So get them in a room and then lock the doors.
yeah. Just provide cake. Cake keeps everyone.
Hello, Emma Matthews, Bournemouth University. You mentioned the microplastics example, which obviously a lot of us will have heard of because it gained widespread media coverage. So what, if anything, do you do to kind of track and evidence the impact that that media coverage is having in reaching those key stakeholders and showing the value of that work in achieving broader impact for your researchers and your work?
We've kept quite a close track on the media coverage. We use Meltwater for tracking our media coverage. We've also, I guess we kept spreadsheets of things as well, and we've followed up and just Google searches and everything, just see where it's been. Oh, yeah, we used to use Altmetric a lot until our institute sadly decided to cancel the subscription. But yes, actually, Altmetric was really useful in finding some of the evidence, actually. We followed some leads up, and it led up to this paper saying, these are the 2 most influential papers on microplastics. And it's like, yes, that's ours, you know. So it was actually, you know, with Altmetrics, there were loads of sort of like false leads and things. But actually, if you follow all of them up, sometimes you can just hit gold dust, really.
Hi, I'm Jackie Reynolds from Staffordshire University. Just linking back to the discussion earlier on about people doing kind of media presentations and things like that, and about some people being more comfortable with that than other people. Is that something, I'd imagine that you probably get asked to do quite a lot of those kind of things. Is it something that everybody's expected to do, or are there certain key people within your organisation that tend to be the ones who are called upon to do that kind of engagement?
Not at all. We certainly wouldn't make anyone do this sort of thing if they weren't comfortable. You know, if they're not comfortable doing it, they're not going to appear good in front of the camera. But we do offer a bit of media training as well, so we can help encourage them to develop these skills. But yes, probably there are a few favourites who are picked rather too often. But we do try and identify the younger members of staff who might be really good to do this and try and build them up to do it as well. Thanks.
Sorry. Any other questions? Dawn Ashby, Jennifer Lockett, thank you very much indeed.